The fault. We believe that all men are created equal.
To the magnificent mosaic that is America.
From radio beacon to radio beacon. I have a dream today. Change has come to America.
Believe me.
Knock, knock. Who's there?
It's a figment of your imagination.
Randi Rhodes Show.
Turn up your mind.
If we had had confidence that the president clearly did not commit a crime, we would have said so. We did not, however, make a determination as to whether the president did commit a crime. The introduction to the Volume 2 of our report explains that decision. It explains that under long-standing department policy, a president cannot be charged with a federal crime while he is in office. That is unconstitutional. Even if the charge is kept under seal and hidden from public view, that too is prohibited. The special counsel's office is part of the Department of Justice, and by regulation, it was bound by that department policy. Charging the president with a crime was therefore not an option we could consider.
So, hello, everybody. Hello. It's Tuesday, and Mueller has spoken. So apparently we now have to wait for Bill Barr to tell us what he said. I mean, this did not sound like anything Bill Barr said when Bill Barr said, here's my bottom line conclusions about what Mueller wrote, which Mueller said today is his testimony. Oh my God, I have to tell you, this is, I mean, Mueller said a lot. He said absolutely nothing that sounded like anything Bill Barr said. I mean, nothing like anything that Bill Barr said. Oh, I'm sorry, that's me. I still have my emails open. I'm looking for legal opinions out there. Let me just, all right. So, it's stunning, okay? Because here is basically what happened. When Mueller was asked to become special counsel, Mueller had predetermined, before he even interviewed any single person or saw one single email or read one single document or learned anything about the Russian intelligence operation, Mueller had predetermined that you cannot indict a sitting president. And so this whole dog and pony show, this whole Mueller investigation was simply to preserve evidence for a time when Donald Trump was no longer president. I hope I've explained that to you. I hope that you understand that the entire Mueller report was undertaken with a predetermined outcome, that no matter how much crime Mueller uncovered on the part of a president, he would not charge. That is unbelievable. That is simply striking. Now, Mueller doesn't want to testify. He said today he hopes this was the last day that I will play you the whole thing, the whole Mueller press conference in case you missed it, because you really need to hear it. It's 9 minutes long. We could fit it into the next segment in its entirety. So I'm going to play it for you so you can sit there and listen to every word he says. And I want you to remember, he's a lawyer. Bill Barr is a lawyer, okay? And these are dueling lawyers parsing freaking words. I want to show you something. I mean, let me play you what Bill Barr said about the OLC. This is what Mueller is getting at when he says that it was predetermined, that it would be unconstitutional because of a Justice Department rule, the OLC rule, that says you can't indict a sitting president. All right. So he went into this investigation knowing the outcome would not be him charging, and that the proper place to charge a president, in his mind, is Congress. Hello, Nancy Pelosi. Hello, Gerald Nadler. I mean, that subpoena would be on Mueller's desk right now. I would have, just would have, just right out of my little hands into Mueller's office. But when Bill Barr was asked specifically that question, was it because, and you know, this is because people who really are paying attention, people who truly read every indictment, the speaking indictments, people who understood what Mueller was finding, people who understood what collusion is versus conspiracy to defraud, right? And it's a very parsed thing in the Mueller report, too, the conspiracy. See, Mueller finds that more than two people acted together in order to interfere with the election. He understands that more than two people. He understands that the Trump campaign and the Russian government did things together. What he says in his report, though, is they didn't explicitly agree to each other's terms, but that they did act together. And in his opinion, conspiracy involves more than two people taking an action. That, to me, is bizarre, but it also goes to show you that he was never going to charge a crime. Okay? And he said as much today. He was never going to charge a crime. But the reason why he would never charge a crime is because of the OLC opinion. And he goes to great lengths today to say, well, I work for the Justice Department, so I'm bound by that Office of Legal Counsel decision. I'm bound by the rule that says you can't indict a sitting president. So I did this to preserve evidence. I did this when, memories were fresh, so I could write it down, so I could memorialize it for the proper place for a president to be indicted, which is Congress. Here's the part where he says that.
The department's written opinion explaining the policy makes several important points that further informed our handling of the obstruction investigation. Those points are summarized in our report, and I will describe two of them for you. First, the opinion explicitly permits the investigation of a sitting president because it is important to preserve evidence while memories are fresh and documents available. Among other things, that evidence could be used if there were co-conspirators who could be charged now. And second, the opinion says that the Constitution requires a process other than the criminal justice system to formally accuse a sitting president of wrongdoing.
Okay, so you follow this? Only Congress can indict a president. Bob Mueller went into this investigation bound by, in his mind, bound by the rule, the OLC rule, you can't indict a sitting president. Well, when Bill Barr was asked that, but for the OLC opinion, would Mueller have been able to find a crime? He said no. He lied.
On March 5th, we specifically asked him about the OLC opinion and whether or not he was taking the position that he would have found a crime but for the existence of the OLC opinion. And he made it very clear several times that that was not his position. He was not saying that but for the OLC opinion he would have found a crime. He made it clear that he had not made the determination that there was a crime.
Now that is so parsed, I can't even tell you. Only lawyers in the audience are going to get what that is, okay? For the rest of us, when you have somebody speaking on behalf of a 2-year investigation and trying to represent to the American people what the way Bill Barr couched it, the way he parsed it, indicates to an ordinary citizen who has to go vote someday that, oh, no, if even if there wasn't an OLC rule that says you can't indict a sitting president, Bob Mueller wouldn't have found a crime. And he told me that over and over again. I mean, I asked him so many times. Well, Bob Mueller handed out to reporters after his little resignation. This was basically him resigning from the Justice Department today and closing the Office of the Special Counsel. That's what this was, okay? And Bob Mueller gave a handout to reporters after, because the reporters all wanted to know whether or not Bill Barr lied about that fact. And Mueller said, well, it was the Justice Department policy, and those were the principles under which we operated, meaning the OLC predetermined that he could not indict a sitting president. And he said, and because of that rule, we concluded that we could not reach a determination one way or the other about whether the president committed a crime. And then he said, this is the office's final position, and we won't comment on any other conclusions or hypotheticals about the president. Oh, bite me, Bob. You have to come forward now because we have an illiterate country that did not read your report. And for those of us who did, there was nothing new in that today. But you have to now explain it to a country of idiots, including Congress.
Clear for takeoff. Randi Rhodes Air Force. Air Force. RandiRhodes.com. all things Randi at RandiRhodes.com.
Go for launch.
Speaking truth to power, the Randi Rhodes Show.
All right, in case you missed it, here is Bob Mueller's resignation from the Department of Justice and his announcement that he is closing the special counsel's office.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you for being here. 2 years ago, the acting Attorney General asked me to serve as special counsel, and he created the special counsel's office. The appointment order directed the office to investigate Russian interference in the 2016 presidential election. This included investigating any links or coordination between the Russian government and individuals associated with the Trump campaign. Now, I have not spoken publicly during our investigation. I'm speaking out today because our investigation is complete. The Attorney General has made the report on our investigation largely public. We are formally closing the special counsel's office, and as well, I'm resigning from the Department of Justice to return to private life. I'll make a few remarks about the results of our work. But beyond these few remarks, it is important that the office's written work speak for itself. Let me begin where the appointment order begins, and that is interference in the 2016 presidential election. As alleged by the grand jury in an indictment, Russian intelligence officers who were part of the Russian military launched a concerted attack on our political system. The indictment alleges that they used sophisticated cyber techniques to hack into computers and networks used by the Clinton campaign. They stole private information and then released that information through fake online identities and through the organization WikiLeaks. The releases were designed and timed to interfere with our election and to damage a presidential candidate. And at the same time, as the grand jury alleged in a separate indictment, a private Russian entity engaged in a social media operation where Russian citizens posed as Americans in order to influence an election. These indictments contain allegations, and we are not commenting on the guilt or the innocence of any specific defendant. Every defendant is presumed innocent unless and until proven guilty. The indictments allege, and the other activities in our report describe, efforts to interfere in our political system. They needed to be investigated and understood, and that is among the reasons why the Department of Justice established our office. That is also a reason we investigated efforts to obstruct the investigation. The matters we investigated were of paramount importance. It was critical for us to obtain full and accurate information from every person we questioned. When a subject of an investigation obstructs that investigation or lies to investigators, it strikes at the core of the government's effort to find the truth and hold wrongdoers accountable. Let me say a word about the report. The report has two parts, addressing the two main issues we were asked to investigate. The first volume of the report details numerous efforts emanating from Russia to influence the election. This volume includes a discussion of the Trump campaign's response to this activity, as well as our conclusion that there was insufficient evidence to charge a broader conspiracy. And in the second volume, the report describes the results and analysis of our obstruction of justice investigation involving the president. The order appointing me special counsel authorized us to investigate actions that could obstruct the investigation. And we conducted that investigation, and we kept the office of the acting Attorney General apprised of the progress of our work. And as set forth in the report, after that investigation, if we had had confidence that the president clearly did not commit a crime, we would have said so. We did not, however, make a determination as to whether the president did commit a crime. The introduction to the Volume 2 of our report explains that decision.
OLC opinion.
It explains that under long-standing department policy, a president cannot be charged with a federal crime while he is in office.
Oh, jeez.
That is unconstitutional.
It is not.
Even if the charge is kept under seal and hidden from public view, that too is prohibited. The special counsel's office is part of the Department of Justice, and by regulation, it was bound by that department policy.
Predetermined.
Charging the president with a crime was therefore not an option we could consider.
Ever.
The department's written opinion explaining the policy makes several important points that further informed our handling of the obstruction investigation. Those points are summarized in our report, and I will describe two of them for you. First, the opinion explicitly permits the investigation of a sitting president because it is important to preserve evidence while memories are fresh and documents available. Among other things, that evidence could be used if there were co-conspirators who could be charged now. And second, the opinion says that the Constitution requires a process other than the criminal justice system to formally accuse a sitting president of wrongdoing.
Congress.
And beyond department policy, we were guided by principles of fairness. It would be unfair to potentially accuse somebody of a crime when there can be no court resolution of the actual charge.
I don't even understand.
So that was Justice Department policy. Those were the principles under which we operated, and from them we concluded that we would not reach a determination one way or the other about whether the president committed a crime.
Punt.
That is the office's final position, and we will not comment on any other conclusions or hypotheticals about the president. We conducted an independent criminal investigation and reported the results to the Attorney General, as required by department regulations. Mm-hmm. The Attorney General then concluded that it was appropriate to provide our report to Congress and to the American people. At one point in time, I requested that certain portions of the report be released. The Attorney General preferred to make the entire report public all at once.
Yeah.
And we appreciate that the Attorney General made the report largely public, and I certainly do not question the Attorney General's good faith in that decision.
Oh my God, you're kidding.
Now, I hope and expect this to be the only time that I will speak to you in this manner.
No.
I am making that decision myself. No one has told me whether I can or should testify or speak further about this matter.
It's coming.
There has been discussion about an appearance before Congress.
Yeah.
Any testimony from this office would not go beyond our report.
Mm-hmm.
It contains our findings and analysis and the reasons for the decisions we made. We chose those words carefully, and the work speaks for itself.
To who?
And the report is my testimony.
Oh.
I would not provide information beyond that which is already public in any appearance before Congress.
That's fine.
In addition, access to our underlying work product is being decided in a process that does not involve our office.
Oh.
So beyond what I've said here today and what is contained in our written work, I do not believe it is appropriate for me to speak further about the investigation or to comment on the actions of the Justice Department or Congress. And it's for that reason I will not be taking questions today as well. Now, before I step away, I want to thank the attorneys, the FBI agents, the analysts, the professional staff who helped us conduct this investigation in a fair and independent manner. These individuals, who spent nearly 2 years with the special counsel's office, were of the highest integrity. And I will close by reiterating the central allegation of our indictments, that there were multiple, systematic efforts to interfere in our election. And that allegation deserves the attention of every American. Thank you. Thank you for being here today.
All right. So that was the entirety of the Bob Mueller press conference. Attacked in a sweeping and systemic attack by a foreign government's military intelligence units and a private troll farm operated by Vladimir Putin's chef, who's a billionaire, in St. Petersburg. And that when they were tasked with investigating this attack, this sweeping systemic attack on American democracy itself, on an American election, the President of the United States obstructed that investigation. He didn't allow for anybody to investigate and find the correct answers to who, what, when, where, why, and how the Russians systemically and sweepingly tasked their military intelligence unit with interfering in our elections. In fact, the response of the Trump campaign was that they welcomed it and that they understood it and that they understood they would benefit from it. And that Mueller found insufficient evidence because the obstruction by the Trump administration materially harmed his investigation. At the outset of his investigation, he had predetermined, Mueller did, that no matter what he found, you couldn't indict a sitting president. And he was never going to do that. And that he decided that since he couldn't clear the president, he wouldn't accuse the president either, because the president, according to him, could never defend himself in court while he was president. Why? I have no earthly idea. But Mueller decided he could investigate. He could investigate for the purpose of preserving the evidence when it was fresh and when it was discoverable. And so he did undertake the investigation with a predetermined conclusion that he would never charge the president with a crime. Instead, Bob Mueller, if you read the Mueller report, you know this. If you didn't, this is going to be news to you, referred 14 cases for criminal prosecution. 12 of those referrals are still under seal. We don't even know what those referrals are and who's included in those referrals. For all we know, it could be Junior. For all we know Roger Stone is one of the public ones of the 14. But there are 12 referrals that were made to other criminal courts, and we don't know what they are yet. And instead of charging the president with a crime, Bob Mueller deduced that Congress was the only venue, the only place that you could properly charge a president with wrongdoing. Now, in addition to that, Bob Mueller said something that should be chilling to everyone who understands what underlying evidence is. Now, remember, Bill Barr testified he never looked at the underlying evidence. Remember, Kamala Harris actually questioned Bill Barr about whether or not he actually looked at the underlying evidence that accompanied the Mueller report. That underlying evidence was never given to Congress. That underlying evidence we don't have. And in Bob Mueller's little, presser today, he said that the underlying evidence resides now with Bill Barr in the DOJ, and that nothing further would be coming from the Office of Independent Counsel because that office is closed as of today. So all of the underlying evidence, all of the testimony, all of the documents, all of the emails, all of the underlying evidence, Michael Flynn's text messages, etc., they now are in the hands of Bill Barr, who will sit on them like a pregnant bird. And you will never see them. DOJ has all the underlying evidence. That is why we must have an impeachment inquiry, so that Congress has the authority to go to a court and say that impeachment is, in fact, a legislative purpose, and that they have undertaken and begun an impeachment inquiry and therefore have a right to all the materials, to all of them. I'm going to play you side by side a little, 30-second clip of Bill Barr versus Bob Mueller. And you will, if you listen very particularly, you can hear the difference. Bill Barr is going to say there was no evidence. Bob Mueller is going to say there was not sufficient evidence. Bill Barr is going to say that the president has been exonerated, and Bob Mueller is going to say he chose not to do either indict or exonerate.
There was no evidence of the Trump campaign collusion with the Russian government's hacking.
There was insufficient evidence to charge a broader conspiracy.
The Deputy Attorney General and I concluded that the evidence developed by the special counsel is not sufficient to establish that the president committed an obstruction of justice offense.
If we had had confidence that the president clearly did not commit a crime, we would have said so.
Can you see the difference? I think it's pretty freaking obvious that Bill Barr is a shill, that Bill Barr is a stooge, that Bill Barr is a liar, and Bill Barr needs to resign and or be impeached alongside the President of the United States. Again,
there was no evidence of the Trump campaign collusion with the Russian government's hacking.
There was insufficient evidence to charge a broader conspiracy.
The Deputy Attorney General and I concluded that the evidence developed by the special counsel is not sufficient to establish that the president committed an obstruction of justice offense.
If we had had confidence that the president clearly did not commit a crime, we would have said so.
No evidence is a whole lot different than insufficient evidence to meet the beyond a reasonable doubt standard. The OLC rule predetermined for Bob Mueller on day one of his investigation that he could not indict. And Bill Barr serves that up to you as some evidence of exoneration, which obviously Mueller refused to do. But for the OLC opinion, Mueller would have produced a different conclusion, a different document.
For a commercial-free, on-demand, whenever, wherever listening experience, visit RandiRhodes.com for your personal premium podcast today.
Indict a sitting president. So Gerald Nadler gave a little speech today. They asked him after the Mueller press conference, what do you intend to do? And here's what he said.
First, I want to thank Special Counsel Robert Mueller for his service to our nation over the past 2 years. Mr. Mueller and his team of prosecutors and investigators worked tirelessly to follow the facts and pursue justice to the furthest extent allowed. Although Department of Justice policy prevented the special counsel from bringing criminal charges against the president, the special counsel has clearly demonstrated that President Trump is lying. He is lying about the special counsel's findings, lying about the testimony of key witnesses in the special counsel's report, and above all, lying in saying that the special counsel found no obstruction and no collusion. In his statement this morning, Special Counsel Mueller reaffirmed his report. It found substantial evidence that Russia attacked our political system, that the Trump campaign benefited from Russian interference, that Trump and those around him repeatedly welcomed Russia's support, and that throughout the subsequent investigation, Trump sought to obstruct Mueller time and time again. Special Counsel Mueller today repeated 3 central points, which are critical for the American people. 1, the special counsel did not exonerate the President of the United States of obstruction of justice. 2, obstruction of justice, of which Special Counsel Mueller found substantial evidence, is a serious crime that strikes at the core of our justice system. 3, the Constitution points to Congress to take action to hold the President accountable for his misconduct.
That's right.
Unfortunately, Special Counsel Mueller was unable to pursue criminal charges against the president because Department of Justice policy prevents a sitting president from being prosecuted. That policy, in my opinion, is wrong.
Yes.
But it prevented the special counsel from pursuing justice to the fullest extent possible. Therefore, as Mueller again highlighted this morning, it falls to Congress to respond to the crimes, lies, and other wrongdoing of President Trump. We will do so. Make no mistake, no one, not even the President of the United States, is above the law.
So that was his prepared statement, Gerald Nadler, who is the chairman of the House Judiciary Committee. And it seems to indicate that he's ready to start impeachment tomorrow, that he understands what we all know, what everybody who read the Mueller report understands, and that is that the United States of America was attacked by the Russian military intelligence services and a private company in St. Petersburg, Florida, St. Petersburg, Russia, and that the Trump campaign knew that they were doing it, that the Trump campaign expected to benefit from it, that the Trump campaign welcomed it, that the Trump campaign was coordinating with the dissemination of stolen, hacked materials from the from the Hillary Clinton campaign that the Russians had hacked and stole, and that they decided to disseminate through WikiLeaks. That the campaign was in touch with WikiLeaks is also in the Mueller report. I mean, I know a lot of people just refuse to read it, but it's in there. It's absolutely in there. And that the Trump campaign, after the Access Hollywood tape, actually took amazing efforts to reach Julian Assange, to get Julian Assange to dump a whole bunch of Podesta's emails to distract from the Access Hollywood tape. Also, in the Mueller report, there is a footnote that clearly says that Michael Cohen was communicated to by a Russian who told Michael Cohen that there was a tape of Donald Trump when he was in Russia in 2013 for the Miss Universe pageant. And that this Russian that communicated with Michael Cohen was able to stop the release of that tape of Donald Trump behaving in a certain way in Russia. Later, that Russian said, well, that tape was fake anyway, but I was able to stop its release. Michael Cohen chose to lie under oath to Congress before he told the truth. Michael Flynn chose to lie to Congress before he told the truth. Manafort chose to lie and continued to lie, believing that the president would pardon him in the end. Donald Trump kept ordering people to fire Bob Mueller. He fired James Comey. And because the special counsel entered into this investigation believing that no matter what he found, he couldn't indict a president, now it's up to Congress to take that information and disseminate it. However, Bob Mueller, a Vietnam veteran, a Marine, doesn't want to be bothered with testifying because he thinks it'll be a spectacle. I got news for you, Bob. If you were brave enough to graduate Princeton and still join the Marines in the height of the Vietnam War, you're brave enough to go to Congress and deal with, what's his face? The one with the pointy head. Who's going to yell at you? It is your patriotic duty to act now in whatever way will have the most value for an American voter, for the American people, to understand whether or not their president is an unwitting or a witting or any kind of Russian asset. Now, Gerald Nadler sounded very strong in his prepared remarks, and then there was a period of questions. He didn't sound so strong during the questioning. It's like, Goodfellas, be careful, he'll fold under questioning. And he did. He chose to read from prepared statements even during the questions.
Congressman, will you move then forward with impeachment proceedings? And given what Mueller has said, meaning that he feels as though the report says all that he needs to say, will you then subpoena him to testify in front of Congress?
With respect to impeachment question, at this point, all options are on the table, and nothing should be ruled out.
Why is he reading this?
Special Counsel Mueller said loud and clear today for the American people is that President Trump is lying when he says no collusion, no obstruction, and that he was exonerated. If Mueller wanted to exonerate the president from having committed the crime, he would have said so. Instead, and he says he would have said so. Instead, the special counsel makes clear that obstruction of justice, which he found substantial evidence of, is a serious crime that strikes at the core of our justice system, and that the Constitution points to Congress to take action to hold the president accountable. That's exactly what we will do. The president's response to repeatedly lie to the American people and ignore all congressional subpoenas is immoral and unlawful. No one is above the law, and we will hold the president accountable.
So if I may follow up with that then, Congressman, with regards to impeachment, will you then move forward at a particular time? You say it's on the table, but what exactly does that mean specifically?
We are following through in our investigation. We will continue to do so, and we'll make decisions as they seem indicated.
One more question. Will you subpoena Mueller to testify then?
Hello.
Mr. Mueller told us a lot of what we need to hear today. It's very important to be clear on what he told us, on what the special prosecutor told the American people. He reaffirmed what was in the investigation, which was in the report about the investigation, which found substantial evidence that Russia attacked our political system, that the Trump campaign benefited from Russia's interference, that Trump and those around him repeatedly welcomed Russia's support, and that throughout the investigation, Trump sought to obstruct justice and undermine Mueller and the investigation over and over again. The president the special counsel did not exonerate the president from having committed a crime. DOJ policy prevented Mueller from bringing criminal charges against the president. So the president is lying about the special counsel's findings, lying and saying that the special counsel found no obstruction and no conclusion. And I should add, the Attorney General is lying about that too.
He's reading. He never answers the question. Are you going to subpoena Mueller? Let's get this show on the freaking road. The President of the United States is a traitor.
.com/donate.
Mary had a little man.
The false. We believe that all men are created equal.
To the magnificent mosaic that is America.
From radio beacon to radio beacon. I have a dream today. Change has come to America.
Believe it. Knock, knock. Who's there?
It's a figment of your imagination.
Randi Rhodes Show.
Turn up your mind.
Do you think the Russians have leverage over President Trump?
I don't know the answer to that.
Think it's possible?
Yes.
Oh, my God. Oh, my God. Okay, so that's the former head of the FBI, James Comey, in a very quick soundbite saying, you don't know, he doesn't know, nobody knows whether or not the Russians have influence over the President of the United States. Don't you think that's worth a little look-see? Don't you think that's worth a little investigation in Congress, the proper venue, according to Bob Mueller, a Marine? Bob Mueller, the Marine. Bob Mueller, the guy who actually graduated Princeton and then volunteered to go to Vietnam, who doesn't want to testify in front of Congress because, the people of the United States need to hear what is in the Mueller report explained to them because they don't freaking read, Bob. They don't read. And you refuse to exonerate the president of being a traitor. All we know is that there was an attack on our democracy, that there was an attack on our election, that they were inside voter registration rolls, and now we find out in all 50 states that they were inside Hillary Clinton's campaign, they were inside the Democratic National Committee, they were inside the Democratic congressional committees, they were inside Podesta's personal emails. The Russians were everywhere, and that they were impersonating Americans, and that they were organizing everything from, get-togethers to fundraisers, to, trashing Hillary Clinton, to all and that the Trump campaign's retweeting all this, crap. And that when it was time to investigate how, when, who, why the Russian military intelligence units were attacking the United States in what was supposed to be a free and fair election in 2016, and it got this very odd result. This really crazy, unbelievable result where the president supposedly won Michigan and Wisconsin by like 10,000 votes. Millions of votes cast, 10,000 votes here, and that's 10,000, not 11,000 over there. And even though Hillary Clinton got 3 million more votes in the popular, because the polling data that the Russians had, which came from Paul Manafort, we know that because that's in the report, that the polling data told the Russians exactly where to focus, what to do, where, when, and with whom they could persuade either people to stay home or people to vote the other way. They did it. And when it was time to investigate that, the President of the United States obstructed that investigation. Don't you think that's worth a little look-see into Congress? I just want to know, where are we on this as a nation? Because, they're telling me that the American people are not yet on board with having an inquiry in the proper venue that could hold this president accountable for such behavior by his campaign. And we have a former director of the FBI writing op-ed after op-ed. He wrote another op-ed Comey did yesterday in the Washington Post. I don't know if you saw that last night. But, he's like free. He's like, the president is a liar, and he's a really dumb liar. He's a stupid man. He's a dumb-ass liar. Because he said, that, now Trump is saying, I want to investigate the investigators. I think Comey committed treason, and that, Comey and McCabe and Clapper, they're the ones that they set me up. They set me up. I mean, it's just so sick, right?
The Constitution says treason is punishable by death. You've accused your adversaries of treason. Who specifically are you accusing of treason?
Well, I think a number of people, and I think what you look is that they have unsuccessfully tried to take down the wrong person. If you look at Comey, if you look at McCabe, if you look at probably people higher than that, if you look at Strzok, if you look at his lover, Lisa Page, his wonderful lover, the two lovers, they talked openly. They didn't use their private server because they didn't want to get caught, so they used the government server. That was not a good move.
You're an idiot.
He talked about the insurance policy just in case crooked Hillary loses. And that didn't work out too well for them. So you look at them, they want an insurance policy so that should she, for any reason, lose, remember, 100 million to 1. Maybe he said 100 million to nothing. But should she lose, we'll have an insurance policy and we'll get this guy out of office. And that's what they said, and that's what they meant. That's treason. That's treason. They couldn't win the election. And that's what happened. And that's what's happening right now because without the treason word, I guess, but that's what's happening now. They don't feel they can win the election, so they're trying to do the 1,000 stabs.
I swear. So Comey actually, typed out an op-ed last night about 5:30 in the afternoon. And this is what he wrote. He wrote, it's tempting for normal people to ignore our president when he starts ranting about treason and corruption at the FBI. He said, I am the object of many of his rants, and even I try to ignore it, but we shouldn't. Because millions of good people believe what the President of the United States says. And in normal times, that's healthy. But not now, when the President is a liar who doesn't care what damage he does to vital institutions. We must call out his lies that the FBI was corrupt and committed treason, that we spied on the Trump campaign and we tried to defeat Donald Trump. We have to constantly return to the stubborn facts. The stubborn fact is that the current director of the FBI, the hand-picked director of the FBI, Chris Wray, also testified recently that there is no evidence of anybody spying on Donald Trump.
Do you have any evidence that any illegal surveillance into the campaigns or individuals associated with the campaigns by the FBI occurred?
I don't think I personally have any evidence of that sort.
I don't think I personally. There may be some manufactured down the line, but I don't have any. Okay, so here's what we have here. Russia engages in this massive effort to interfere in our election. And Comey says, near as I can tell, there's only one U.S. leader who still denies this fact. And then he lays out how this all unfolded. He said the FBI saw the attack. We saw it starting in mid-June of 2016 with the first dump of the stolen emails. And then in late July, when we were hard at work trying to understand the scope of this effort, we learned that one of Trump's foreign policy advisors knew about the Russian effort 7 weeks before we did. That was George Papadopoulos. In April of 2016, that advisor, George Papadopoulos, talked to a Russian agent in London and learned that the Russians had obtained dirt on Hillary Clinton in the form of thousands of emails, and that the Russians could assist the Trump campaign through the anonymous release of information damaging to Clinton. Of course, nobody from the Trump campaign told us this, or later about the approaches by Russians. We, at the FBI, had to learn it months after the fact from an allied ambassador. That's the ambassador from Australia. So they knew that there was going to be an attack 7 weeks before, or that there was an attack 7 weeks before anybody knew it. And when the first dump of emails came, that's when the FBI got involved. And they still, nobody from the Trump administration or the Trump campaign at that time told the FBI that they knew that a Russian intelligence operation was actually occurring in the United States to benefit Donald Trump. Now, you go tell me that that man is worthy of being a president. You go tell me that that man doesn't need to be impeached. You go tell me that somebody who knew 7 weeks before the FBI knew that an attack had occurred on our election and didn't tell the FBI is suitable to be president.
Clear for takeoff. Randi Rhodes Air Force. Air Force. RandiRhodes.com. Call in, connect. To speak to Randi, call 561-270-3844. 561-270-3844.
So obviously what Nancy Pelosi is waiting for is some Republican support for the effort to open an impeachment inquiry. And, like I said, there's a small crack, in the Republican front. And the small crack is this libertarian dude from Grand Rapids, Michigan's 3rd District, Justin Amash, right? And so Justin Amash was tweeting before we went away for the week, right? And he was tweeting like that he had just completed the Mueller report and that in it, the behavior was appalling, that there were obviously crimes that had been committed. There was a cover-up. There was all this stuff, right? And that he believes that the president of the United States is unworthy of being president of the United States, that he had violated the public trust and other things, and that his behavior was just shocking to him. And he believes that there's a constitutional obligation to begin an impeachment inquiry. Well, today, after the Mueller press conference, Amash doubled down and said, where are my Republican colleagues? Because he actually said in a town hall the other day, or it was last night, he said in a town hall last night that some of his colleagues privately are saying what he's been saying publicly on Twitter and in a town hall meeting that he had yesterday, and that is that the president of the United States is a traitor, that he is not into America. He's into something other than America. and that some of his colleagues know this.
My colleagues tell me all the time. In fact, you wouldn't believe how many phone conversations I had or conversations in person with colleagues. Justin, by the way, a lot of them think I'm right about the Mueller report, but they just won't say it. There are a lot of the Republicans.
What?
And what they'll say to me is, Justin, you know, going out publicly with that, you know the Democrats will never support you. You know that they're hypocrites on this stuff. And I say, you know, some of them are, some of them aren't, but it doesn't matter to me. Because you have to look at what you're doing first. You have to care about what you're doing. And if you have a society where all we care about is that the other side is bad, and therefore we don't have to do the right thing, that society will break down, and you will have no liberty. For those of you who care about liberty, who care about our Constitution, I assure you, the surest way to make our Constitution a dead letter is to have a society where we all hate each other, and we don't care about what the other side is doing, whether they're doing right or wrong. We're just going to hate them and disagree with them. That's the surest way to destroy our Constitution. And I refuse to be a part of that. I will always stand up for liberty, stand up for our Constitution.
Now, that is extremely admirable, and for that, he will get Democratic support. There is no question that he will get Democratic support. Where the Democratic support will fade is on policy, because Amash is a libertarian and does not believe that, health care is a right. He doesn't believe that. And he doesn't believe in Social Security. He doesn't believe that, you have the right to age with a pension, after you paid in your whole life to the FICA tax, Social Security Trust Fund. So, that's where the support for him will fade away. But on this particular issue, on the particular issue of upholding the Constitution, an obligation to make sure that the president is not a domestic enemy, that the president isn't undermining the rule of law, that the president isn't looking to trash every American institution that enforces the law or executes the law or treats people, with dignity, like this ICE force or, the obligation to uphold the law and to not trash all of our institutions that matter to the civility and the functionality of America. If the president is trashing all of that, then yes, we will join with Justin Amash on that issue and support him. Now, he's going to get primaried. There's already 2 Republicans from his neighborhood that have said that they are going to run against him in the primary, and he seriously doesn't care. That kind of dedication to a Constitution should never be forgotten, even when you have policy disagreements. And there will be policy disagreements with a guy like Justin Amash, who is a complete and utter libertarian. There have to be other Republicans. If he's telling a town hall in Grand Rapids last night, oh, you wouldn't believe how many phone calls I get from other colleagues of mine. You wouldn't believe how they all know. They all know. They're all worried about an election. An election. This cannot be about an election. You cannot, as he said last night, violate the public trust and not be accountable.
I think it's really important that we do our job as a Congress, that we not allow misconduct to go undeterred, that we not just say someone can violate the public trust and that there are no consequences to it. And if you get a chance, I encourage you all to read the tweet where it lays all of this out. Mueller's report lays all of this out. And I'm confident that if you read Volume 2, you will be appalled at much of the conduct. And I was appalled by it. And that's why I stated what I stated. That's why I came to that conclusion, because I think we can't let conduct like that go unchecked. Congress has a duty to keep the president in check, and it is a difficult process for those who are worried about Congress intruding on the president's powers consistently. It is a difficult process to remove someone from office.
Mitigate those conditions. And this is what happened when the United States of America, or at least a third of the United States of America, decided that character doesn't matter in a president. That even though this man was out there saying you could grab women by the P word, and even though he was out there screaming, I'll tax you MFs, and using that kind of language, and saying, that he alone could fix it, and selling himself as this great businessman when obviously he was the ultimate failure in business, lying repeatedly about what he built when he was really only licensing his name and getting paid on the front end. And people who were investing in those properties were getting burnt on the back end. Having universities that had to settle for being fraudulent. Having charities that were fraudulent. Having everything about him be a fraud. When people decided it didn't matter, the character of that man didn't matter, this is where we ended up. And that there are some Republicans who are at least calling Justin Amash, calling other Republicans saying, this man is a problem. This man is bizarre. No one gets it. No one understands who he's serving. It certainly isn't the American people. When that is the case, it should be a no-brainer. A no-brainer to at least start an inquiry into his suitability, into his lawfulness or lawlessness. Because that is the job of the legislative branch. They are the first branch of government mentioned in the Constitution because they have this awesome power of oversight over the executive, so we don't end up with a king. It has to start, and it has to start now, and it has to start immediately with a subpoena to Mueller. McCabe is in violation of his subpoena. The law has got to be enforced, and that you are starting to see. That people are insulted and affronted and appalled by this president and our attorney general is a start.
This is the Randi Rhodes Show. To speak with Randi, dial 561-270-3844. That's 561-270-3844.
Even though Mueller presents all of these elements, he lists them in his findings and analysis, he doesn't come to any assessment because he says, well, we can't indict a sitting president. And he didn't think it would be right to leave an open indictment like that, to leave open charges like that without being able to actually go forward with an indictment, and not give the president then also an opportunity to defend himself through the legal process, because it'd just be sitting there during the president's tenure. So he really left it to Congress to come to a determination on these issues. And what I'll say is that in the Constitution, impeachment is a special form of indictment. It is not a criminal indictment. So we're not saying when we proceed with impeachment, if that were to happen, that we're charging the president with criminal counts. It's not about criminality. So even though Mueller's report makes clear that there are elements that meet criminal standard, that's not what impeachment is about. It's a finding that someone has violated the public trust. So the Constitution talks about treason, bribery, and other high crimes and misdemeanors. And when you go back and look at what the framers of the Constitution said, and early American scholars, and even current American scholars, they're pretty consistent on this, that high crimes and misdemeanors refers not to specific statutory crimes. And in fact, when the Constitution was written, there were basically no federal statutory crimes.
Right.
The federal government wasn't really involved in criminal law. It was primarily state governments and local that would be more involved with criminality.
Right. There were no federal crimes. There were no federal crimes. So, yeah. But that is a Republican. That is a libertarian Republican. That is Justin Amash talking to his constituents. About 800 people attended that town hall in Grand Rapids. And some people are very upset with him, I have to say. Some people are super, super upset with him because they think, oh, when did you become a Democrat? Simply because he believes in upholding the law. When did the law become partisan? When did inquiring about a president's, well, we've never seen a president get help from a foreign adversary. We've never seen a president expect to benefit from a foreign attack on the United States in an election, knowing 7 weeks before the FBI knows that the attack had taken place, not telling the FBI. Just never has happened. Never has happened. But that is why we call the president a traitor to this nation, because it has been shown in the Mueller report that 7 weeks before the FBI knew that the United States had been attacked, Donald Trump's campaign knew that the United States had been attacked. And throughout the entire campaign, they were enjoying being attacked. They were enjoying watching Russia manipulate and move people from voting for Hillary Clinton to Donald Trump. He was benefiting from it, and he accepted that help. That's just where we are. That's who we have as a president of the United States. Doug in Denver.
Hi, Randy.
Hey, Doug.
Yeah, regarding impeachment, I just heard her say, we're legislating, we're investigating, and we're litigating. Legislating what? I thought nothing was getting passed through the Senate.
Well, it isn't, but she has wait. Just be clear about this, okay? The House has passed an enormous amount of legislation, an enormous amount. They've done a disaster relief bill. They've done a farmer bailout. They've done the Clean Government Act. They've done gun control. They've done, a million pieces of legislation have passed the House. Mitch McConnell is in charge of the Senate, not her. So when she says she's legislating, she is legislating.
Yeah, but she needs to be saying, yeah, but the Senate and the president aren't doing anything that we want, so we're impeaching.
Well, no, because you don't. That would be bad. That would be bad because you don't impeach for political reasons. You don't impeach a president because the Senate won't act on your legislation, just like you don't, as a president, declare emergency powers because Congress is denying you funding for a wall. That would be wrong.
Well, isn't it wrong for her to say we're not impeaching because we're legislating?
I didn't hear her say that we're not impeaching because we're legislating. Only you heard that. Nobody else did. What she said was she was legislating, and that's true. Investigating, that's true. Litigating, that's true. They have gone to court, and the court has actually ruled against Donald Trump at least 3 times already, okay? They said that Mazars has to give up their financial reports on Donald Trump, that Deutsche Bank has to provide the financial documents, and then what was the other thing? The court ruled that the president didn't have the right to declare emergency powers and reappropriate the defense money for a wall simply because Congress denied him the funding for a wall. So they are litigating, they are legislating, and they are investigating. They should be ready, though, with a subpoena for Bob Mueller tomorrow. See, people get very, very angry, and the anger clouds what's really, really happening. She's not telling you a fib. If she says she's legislating, go look at all the House bills that were passed. She has no control over Mitch McConnell. Nobody does. Mitch McConnell is a douche. He is a big, giant douche. He's a tool. This is a man who said that Obama, took great pride in the fact that Obama will not fill that Supreme Court vacancy.
And on that sad day when we lost Justice Scalia, I made another pledge that Obama would not fill this seat. That honor will go to Donald Trump next year.
That's Mitch McConnell. What control does Nancy Pelosi have over this douche, over this man? None. But that doesn't stop the House from doing its work. The House has passed a lot of pieces of legislation that are important to you. Bob in California.
Hi, Randy.
Hi, Bob.
With all the expanded powers Trump is putting onto Barr at this point, being able to declassify whatever he feels like, and given his demonstrated obstruction, wouldn't it be wiser to impeach Barr first before going after Trump?
Oh, yeah. I mean, there'll be articles against him, too. I mean, this man is just, he's shameful. He obviously, twisted and maligned and mashed up, what Mueller's report said and, let it marinate with the American public for 3 or 4 weeks before he put it out there, and then the redactions, and he's got all the underlying evidence, and he won't release it. Yeah, Barr's got to go, too, but I don't know in what order it should happen. If it were, let's just look at the way that the prosecutors might do it. They would prosecute the little fish first. So in that way, you'd be right.
But even if we go that way, you just demonstrated how we don't have any control over what happens in the Senate.
None.
Are we going to be able to hold Mitch McConnell accountable for any sort of flop of a hearing in the Senate should an impeachment move over to the Senate for the trial?
Okay, right. So there wouldn't be a hearing. It would be a trial in the Senate. And as far as I read the Constitution, while it says that the Senate is the sole trier of the president, it doesn't say that they must, upon impeachment, have a trial. So I doubt Mitch McConnell would even have a trial. Here's the thing. If we began this impeachment inquiry and people could start to hear the testimony given by Don McGahn, given by Michael Flynn, given by Mueller himself, right, they would suddenly, because nobody's read this report, if they had, they would be sickened by this man. They would hate him because he hates the United States, hates it. He finds everything about us inconvenient, everything about us to be too, cumbersome and too full of laws and rules of the road and regulations and things to protect the people from abuse. He doesn't like America, okay? And he's looking to dismantle this country's principles and our core document, the Constitution. If we had impeachment hearings, people would start to know that because they would watch television. They don't read, but they would watch television. And there would be so much pressure on the Senate to do exactly what the American people would be screaming to have them do, and that's remove the president, that they just might do it. But without the impeachment inquiry, without televised hearings, without Mueller testifying, without McGahn testifying, without Flynn testifying, without all of this, we stay right here in this deep well of frustration. Those of us who do know are sickened by this man because of his lack of respect for our country, for these United States, and the rest of the American people have no idea. But you put it on TV, everybody gets it.